Welcome back, my dear children, to Monster Masked by FredMSlonkier. Tonight's tale, we watch as Rainbow Dash encounters a fight left over from the Blaze of Discord. A fight that will soon take her to new and more bigger proportions. Join us all to you as we present to you the big battle. The Manhattan docks. Dawn. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the city that never slept, two ponies worked to unload a sensitive cargo from one of the ships into the harbor onto a sturdy cart.
So, what's in these barrels anyway?
One of the two, a lime green pony with a pink mane, wondered, reaching for a lid. The other pony, with a sea blue mane, swiftly moved his own hoof to intercept the jester.
Don't over that, newbie! You supposed to melt your hooves off!
He glared at the first pony, drew his hoof back a wounded expression. The younger pony protested,
Wasn't gonna open it.
I just want to know what's in it. Never seen so many warning stickers.
You know that whole mess we had with Discord getting loose, running around a month ago?
The older, senior pony said as he took hold of the barrel. His trainee took the hint, grabbed the other side, and held it close to the cart.
How could I miss it?
The younger pony replied.
That was one crazy day, or week, or whatever. Well, this is a parting gift from his ugliness.
Oh, you stunned me. I think I'm quite beautiful, the veteran teacher said.
Plus a chaos scoot they scraped off the bottom of who knows where.
The younger worker nearly dropped his end of the barrel and shot.
I thought the elements got rid of all that. Almost all that.
The supervisor corrected him.
They've been finding little puddles of the stuff all over the place. Real nasty, too. We have to move it by hoof, because it does crazy things if a unicorn so much as sneezes on it. Then, why are we touching all this stuff, then?
The green pony was handling his end of the barrel, like it would explode its sliced nuts.
Why are we shipping it into the middle of Manhattan? The elements have better things to do than find every little ditch that got some of this stuff in it.
The yellow pony replied, hustling the barrel into place onto the cart with no such care.
We've been gathering the stuff up for weeks, putting it all in one place. The elements come into town, they can do their rainbow magic thing, all up at once, and go do whatever they do when they ain't saving our flanks.
The rookie shook his head disbelievingly, tossing another barrel to the cart.
This is nuts, he said. I can't even imagine how bad this could go.
The veteran chuckled dryly.
Best not to think too hard about it, kid. Besides, this is about the last batch. By this time tomorrow, it'll all be done and dusted. Now come on, let's get this over with.
The two fell silent. Then, focusing on loading the cart, but the younger pony couldn't help but frown. He just couldn't help but shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. Like one of the barrels falling off the cart or leaking or something. And he was seldom wrong somehow about feelings like that. As his cueing mark, bright yellow hardhat could attest. He just hoped it wouldn't wind up being his fault somehow. On a small island far from Manhattan Harbor, charted only because it presented a hazard to shipping and populated largely by birds and lizards, a curious set of tracks led out to the deep rock crevice. At first, they were just little three-toed tracks, slight indentations in the dirt and soil around the rock. As they progressed, however, they began to grow and deepen, twice their former size. 5 times, 10 times, they were headed in an unusual direction as well, straight as an arrow to sea, pointing at the heart of Manhattan. Oh, Manhattan, what you do to me? Such a bustling community. Rainbow Dash was in good spirits as she and her friends got their first sight of the city of Manhattan. It was huge, not just horizontally, but vertically, with buildings that practically scraped the sky. Not to see trade life in Ponyville for anything, but the idea of trying some high-speed maneuvers at this height with obstacles was making her wings twitch. How did the weather ponies even here work? She had to hook up with the local weather patrol and ask some questions. Granted, it wasn't a leisure trip. Princess Celestia had all of them to come to the city to deal with leftovers of discordiness. The weight of the necklace around her neck was a reminder enough of that. Still, how long could that take? They'd go wherever warehouse this stuff was locked up in, do their super cool light show, send the junk back where it belonged. Then she could do some flying in, Maybe check out the local restaurants. All the other sites that they wanted to see, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Hey, AJ, you know any good places to eat around here?
She wondered, looking at her fellow passenger. That was the only downside of the trip in question, having to sit in a chariot instead of getting to wing there herself.
Well, I'd let us stay here too, though.
Applejack replied, running a hoof nervously along the side of the chariot. She wasn't exactly thrilled to be this high up, but she was handling it like a trooper in Das's not-so-nice opinion.
Well, that was a long time ago. You should ask Uncle Lawrence if he knows a good spot.
Or orange sherbet.
Nah, I'll just look around myself,
Des said, waving out the idea. Hang out with Applejack's foals when there was flying to do? No thanks.
Twilight, what's a skizzle again?
Twilight Sparkle looked up from a carefully planned itinerary, designed to maximize her opportunity to take in the important locations of Manhattan, like the library, museum, and magical hall of science.
We're going to land around 10:15 at the holding facility,
she replied, raising her voice so Rainbow Dash could hear her from the next area over.
They should have confirmation of the last delivery by 11 o'clock, but I've allowed 30 minutes in case of delay. We've got a 15-minute block to use the elements of harmony, recover, and then I'm going to get lunch at... Board now!
Rainbow Dash replied, turning away from Twilight and Fluttershy. Well, she assumed Fluttershy was still in there somewhere, and looking over to the chariot on the other side, where Rarity and Pinkie Pie were sitting. Rarity looked bored as Dash felt, slumped over the side of the chariot, mane fluttering in the breeze, yet somehow not misplacing a strand. She was probably eager to get her a hose on some of those fancy frou-frou shots she had been talking about when they had been planning the trip. Or maybe she was just tired of sharing a carriage with Pinkie Pie, who, as far as Rainbow Dash could tell, hadn't actually stopped talking since they lifted off. Just as Rainbow Dash was about to turn her attention back to the city, she saw something that jolted her awake instantly. Pinkie Pie had started vibrating worse than at times she had been too enthusiastic about a ball of syrup labeled Shake Well, and bounced herself halfway across Ponyville. Why do I not doubt that? As there wasn't a ball of syrup anywhere in sight, it could mean only one thing.
Twilight! Twilight! She bellowed, turning to face the unicorn and pointing the other direction. Looks like we got a doozy!
It didn't take long to locate the doozy. Pony screamed, running in all directions, as a giant lizard hauled itself onto the docks, knocking barrels and boxes into the water and sending birds scurrying. Out from the depths, 30 stories high, 50 meters tall, head in the sky, everybody, Godzilla! 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 And I'm not finishing the rest of that song. No! It was at least 50 long, but other than that, Rainbow Dash didn't think it looked so tough. It was really spindly, looking more like a snake that someone had stuck skinny legs to, and those legs ended in round, harmless-looking toes. The feet featured raised, bulging eyes, and a long slit of a mouth that looked almost smiling. Okay, it had pointy teeth, but they were pretty short. Probably ate bugs or something. Really big bugs.
Oh dear!
Fluttershy shouted. This was to say, Rainbow Dash could hear her, even as the Terriers raced to the scene.
That's a moss centimeter.
That's so you can see why it was called that. It was spotted green and black, rather than a mossy rock. Okay, fellow listeners, if you could kindly place down in the comments, what do you think? Godzilla, green or charcoal? I've had a long discussion with myself about this.
They're extremely rare. I've never seen one before.
What's it doing here then? Dash demanded. Fluttershy shook her head.
I don't know. I don't know why it's so big.
I think I know, Twilight said, frowning at the sight. The creature's slick wet hide covered in a strange sheen, like a thin coat of liquid rainbow. But it was shifting and moving in disturbing ways. Doesn't matter what it's doing here, Applejack said, hitting the chariot's railing with a hoof. What matters is what we're going to do about it!
Land us there!
Twilight replied, calling to the Pegasi pulling chariots, pointing to the spot where the wharf transits into the city.
We'll figure something out!
The chariots had some difficulty landing, because of all the panicked ponies. Rainbow Dash saw a strangely familiar pony yelling,
The horror! The horror!
But it managed somehow. The six jumped out, and the Pegasi immediately took off again, heading back toward the center of the city. Twilight watched the giant creature as it began to plow through stacked crates, cleared the dock and getting into the waterfront. Okay, Fluttershy, see if you can get it to turn and go home. Rainbow Dash, go with her. If that doesn't work, maybe you can distract it. Rarity, let's try making a big net to catch it with. Applejack, you make sure no pony gets hurt. What do I get to do, Twilight? Pinkie Pie interjected, hopping up and down. Twilight turned her serious look on the party pony. Pinkie Pie, you do whatever it is you do. See, wasn't sure Pinkie Pie can make a difference, but she'd been surprised many times before. Okie dokie okie! Pinkie responded, hopping off. Rainbow Dash grinned, crouching in preparation for takeoff. You heard Fluttershy! Let's go tell that big lizard to go home!
Actually, it's an amphibian.
Fluttershy began to say, but Dash didn't hear it. She was already in the sky. Okay, girls, I think I got a backup plan for what we should do in order to distract the lizard. I got this little chihuahua, and I think it might work. Here, lizard. For those of you old enough to actually recognize that reference, yay for you! Operation Big Lizard Go Home started well. Fluttershy eventually joined Rainbow Dash in the air, fluttering forward to look in one of its bulbous eyes, as Dash hung back to watch it for trouble.
Excuse me, Mr. Salamander?
She began. Then showed us the bulbous eye blinked, her distorted reflection flowing in the fluid of coating its eye. She took a big breath, forcing itself to go on, reminding herself that no matter how big it was just an amphibian at heart. Far from home, probably scared.
You can't go this way. There's an awful lot of ponies here, and things that might hurt you. Maybe you could show me where you came from, and...
The salamander, as it turned out, was incapable of hearing a sound so quiet. It began to advance again. A Fluttershy squeaked and locked up, not only falling because Rainbow Dash started and caught at her. I don't think the solo approach is working, Shy, she said. Let me give it a try. You! She pointed at the lizard with a hoof. Yeah, you! Listen up! He came to a stop again, tilting his head to peer at her. On the ground below, Applejack paused to look up. Rainbow Dash, what do you think you're doing? She said to herself. Then a pony screamed, as he returned hurrying the frightened ponies down the side streets, away from the line of salamanders and fence. Hold on, I'm coming! Tiny Sparkle was running around too, frantically gathering anything that might serve her purpose. Netting, tarp, fabric. It was strong enough, looting destroyed crates and tattered storehouses. Rarity was right behind her, stitching the hovering fabric together as swiftly as she could. Oh, these things look terrible! She lamented. They just need to be strong! Twilight shouted back. Where's Pinkie Pie? She helped the pony and ended up making things worse, like an Appaloosa. Then Twilight saw something that gave her a surge of new hope. Royal guards were making their way down the street towards her group. Earth ponies in tight formation, Pegasi flying overhead, and unicorns in the rear. She hoped it wouldn't come to that, but if Fluttershy couldn't persuade the beast to turn back, they could help keep things under control, while she and Rarity caught it. Rainbow Dash continued her diplomatic approach. You can't just walk in here like you own the place. Don't have some big rock to lay on somewhere.
Actually, this particular salamander only lives in shady rock crevices and cliffs and other...
Fluttershy tried to interrupt. Go on, shoot! Go buy her something else. There aren't any bugs here for you to eat.
Nobody really knows what to eat, though small invertebrates are most likely...
Are you even listening to me? Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you.
I think it is looking at us, Rainbow Dash.
Then the salamander opened its mouth and snapped down. Rainbow Dash darted backward, Fluttershy squeaking in fright, half at the bite and half at the sudden maneuver, throwing her forelegs around Dash's neck. The bright blue Pegasus started to choke, drifting away from the salamander as he did. Too tight, she protested, wriggling to get Fluttershy to loosen her grip. Twilight and Rarity were hurrying back along the waterfront, their improvised net largely completed. You're doing great, Rarity, Twilight said, glancing up at the salamander, which was advancing again, but more slowly. There's a few more pieces, and we should be ready to... Civilians are clear! A voice barked. Twilight looked ahead, seeing a burly earth pony at the head of the royal guardsmen. Let him have it, boys! Twilight looked confused, then gaped when she saw the unicorn stepping forward, focusing their attention on the salamander, horns glowing bright. There had been a reason she had been planning on using a big net, rather than casting a levitation spell. No! Don't! It's been exposed to Discord! She shouted. But she wasn't close enough, or they didn't listen. A flare of magical energy appeared around the salamander. Then, the flare seemed to suck itself into the salamander's skin, which began to glow with a sickly rainbow light. Oh, this can't be good, Twilight said. It wasn't. The salamander began to grow even further, skin bulging with new muscle. Frills and fins sprouted on its body, giving a more lizard-like repellence. Its toes swelled up, then burst like pimples, revealing long, jagged claws. Its mouth lost its smiling appearance, hanging open, displaying sharper, longer teeth. Its eyes shrunk into its body, becoming fierce and predatory. It lunged at the royal guards, scaring them and forcing them to fall back. Then it grabbed hold of the other buildings on either side of the street to come down and hold itself upright, crushing handholds in the process. Twilight gaped as she looked up. She hadn't gotten a real feel for its size before, and now it seemed 10 times the size. It was a small comfort to realize that, based on the buildings next to it, it probably was only a bit over 100 feet tall. You know, people, this is probably about as close as we're going to get to having Godzilla on the show. The royal guards immediately set to work again, near ponies rounding up the civilians, unicorns protecting them from falling rubble, the Pegasi flying at the beast and trying to either drive it back or lure it away. It roared and snapped at him, but continued to advance, smashing its way down the street, barely wide enough for it. Applejack relieved her of duty, ran up to Twilight Rarity. I don't think there's a big last enough big enough to corral that beast, she called, eyes wide. Twilight let the giant net drop somewhere out of the way, frowning as he looked at Applejack, then brightening as he saw the necklace the Earth Pony wore. Of course! The elements of harmony will purge Discord's influence and turn it back to normal. She turned to the sky, where Rainbow Dash had gained breadth and stability. Rainbow Dash! Fluttershy! New plan! Get down here! Pinkie Pie! She paused, realizing the obvious. Pinkie Pie, where are you? We need to use the elements of harmony! Ah! A familiar voice cried, and it just finished the frosting! Rarity, Applejack, and Twilight Sparkle turned to look at what for all the world like the world's biggest cupcake. With tank treads, and Pinkie Pie sticking out of a hat so with a giant cherry on top. How did you... never mind! Twilight said, shaking her head as Rainbow Dash landed nearby, easy Fluttershy to the ground. Just come here! We need to purify that thing! She turned to look, only to be surprised it dipped behind a nearby building. She could still hear its footsteps, but they were farther away than she had expected them to be. We gotta get ahead of it! She decided, looking around and spying the nearest parallel street. Hurry! She and the rest of the little ponies galloped off. It was headed for the warehouse, of course. General Ironside frowned as he watched the giant lizard work its way down the street. Pegasi began whipping it with its wings, and one had even gathered together to create a great thundercloud and hit it with a bolt of lightning. That just made its dorsal fins start glowing. Unicorns had been gathering up the rubble and hurling at the beast. That just got it mad. The Earth ponies were too busy evacuating buildings and clearing panicked civilians to do anything else. Suddenly, he noticed a commotion at the edge of the perimeter. A group of ponies trying to get into the street, being held back by the guards. Recognizing one of the faces, he headed in that direction and faced stern. For your own safety, his lieutenant was saying, we need all ponies to clear the street. With the elements of harmony, the frustrated unicorn replied. Let us through! I swear I wish I was a princess so I could use my title.
Step aside, son.
General Ironside barked, smirking inwardly as the lieutenant jumped up quickly and out of the way.
Don't you recognize natural heroes when you see them? I hope you have a plan, Miss Sparkle, because we're running out of ideas.
Twilight nodded confidently, leading the other 5 ponies to the center of the street, facing the Ironside monster. All right, girls, let's do this, she said, taking her stance, feeling the magic of friendship beginning to fill her heart. General Ironside watched intently, as, one by one, Twilight Sparkle's friends began to glow with color-colored energy. He was distracted, however, when the lieutenant yelled, Sir, the monster's reacting! Turning to see what his lieutenant meant, he gaped. The big lizard had stopped his advance, mouth open, filled with flame. Even as he cried, "Look out!" the fireball became a lance of flame, shooting down the street, piercing windows with a shockwave, forcing his troops to ground out or out of the street entirely, impacting directly where the elements of harmony stood. Go subway train, forward back down again, Godzilla! For a moment, he could see a simmering soap bubble holding the energy back. Then it burst. Thankfully, only a second before the flame blast stopped as well. The 6 ponies were gathered across the street, burnt and battered, in a shallow crater the force of the blast created. Slowly, they struggled to their feet, looking groggily. All but one. "Oh no!" Piggy said, fussing to Fireside side, nudging her gently. "Fireside, wake up!" "Without her," Twilight said, stomach sinking, "we can't use the elements of harmony." Rainbow Dash looked up from her fallen friend to the monster, which was once again moving down the street, then to Twilight. Her thoughts raced. How were they supposed to beat that thing? If they kept going the way it's going, it'd be at the warehouse, with all that Discord gunk, in no time. And who knows what would happen if it got its slimy paws on more of that stuff. An idea popped into her head. It was a horrible, suicidal, insane idea. Just the kind she liked. "Try to hold it back!" she told Twilight. Her lift off a touch wobbly, but good enough. "I've got an idea!" "What idea?" Twilight said, turning to look at Dash. Or rather, the rainbow trail which the Pegasus had been. "Wait! Rainbow Dash!" She was already gone. A window showering startled Professor Zeta. The unicorn overseeing the workers at the warehouse, where the toxic discordium, as he named the stuff in his latest paper, was stored, causing him to lose his magical grip on his clipboard, and drop it off the catwalk he stood on. He turned to see a vaguely familiar Pegasus, with a violently colored mane, shake glass of her body, that moved to hover next to him with some alarmness. "Is this the stuff?" she yelled out, pointing a hoof at one of the main barrels. He nodded, unable to speak. "How do you get this thing open?" she continued, sweeping over the edge of the catwalk, and standing next to one of the barrels. His mate stood on end at the end of the question. He stammered, "Open it! You can't possibly open it! The risk of exposure are unimaginable! You will be killed, or worse, you could—" "Never mind, I got it!" the Pegasus said, grabbing the barrel and hauling it to the scene. Then, to his horror, pile driving it into the concrete floor as the workers ran for their lives. Twilight Sparkle was doing her best, but it wasn't enough. They were trying a diversionary tactic, attacking the creature from behind instead of ahead, throwing debris and launching blasts of hail, and even rubbing up and kicking the beast. It had paused briefly at an intersection, only to turn and start breaking through a warehouse. The warehouse next door to the storage facility, she realized, feeling sick. It was as if it were being drawn to the discordant fluid like a magnet. And when it had reached it, chaos. Absolute chaos. Pinkie Pie was down, having been whipped off its tail into a building. Applejack was walking with a limp from having been yanked into the air with her own lasso. Rarity was panting with exhaustion as he tried to levitate objects large enough to have some effect on the creature. And Fireside was still unconscious, and Rainbow Dash was still nowhere to be seen. "Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it fast!" Twilight said, wondering if the situation had become dire enough to try casting a spell on the beast, causing it to mutate further, possibly into something less dangerous. Then, the side of the storage facility blew up. Twilight gasped, then frowned, as he realized two important things. One, the creature was still working its way through the other warehouse. Two, the blast had been outward from the storage facility, followed by the sound of another impact on the far side of the warehouse. Something had punched its way from one building to the other. But what? She got her answer in short order, but she wasn't sure she believed it. A head pushed its way through the building in front of the creature, completing the destruction, and continued to rise, followed by a body that grew up, and up, and up. It looked like a Pegasus pony, wrapped in silver and striped with bold, sky-blue slashes with ragged edges, like lightning bolts running all over it. His face was nearly featureless, with only a small hole where the mouth should be, and almond-shaped eyes glowing white. At his throat, a brilliant blue light shone. She had to squint, but it looked bolt-shaped as well. Ha! For a mane, it had a dangerous-looking fin, running over its head back to the wave's tail, striped of all colors of the rainbow.
Rainbow Dash?
She gaped. Then, the giant Pegasus kicked the salamander in the face.
Oh yeah! Ultraman time!
Rainbow Dash could hear the screams from far away, like little panicked mice, but she couldn't focus on them. Everything was so small and weird looking, like she had eyes on the side of her head and goofy glasses. But that was nothing compared to the weird sensations turning in her gut. The earth would crush, break, and destroy, to leave nothing but chaos in her wake. She could feel a light burning in her heart, holding back the chaos. The power of the element of loyalty. But she couldn't fully embrace it. If she did, the power she'd been given go away, and she needed that power right now, to save her friends. So she lashed out at the giant lizard, driving it back, wincing a little as it crossed another warehouse.
Sorry!
She said, or tried to. She didn't seem to speak in this form, just grunt. The lizard had gotten faster, or she'd gotten slower. Even as she moved forward to hit it again, it was bracing itself. And when she tackled it, she only slid back a little, rooting more in the landscape, before it got its feet under it and turned to her in turn. She met its charge, held it back, but when it bit at her face, she had to let go and step back. The lizard's spines began to glow, and another ball of flame began to gather its throat. Rainbow Dash stood up, finding the gesture easier than expected. Raised her forelegs to block the blast. It poured over her legs and chest, dizzying her, but not doing any real damage. Okay, she thought, my turn! She moved forward and began pummeling the lizard with everything she could think of. Sharp karate chops, kicks to the legs, even a headbutt when she was feeling particularly saucy. The lizard gave way with every blow, moving further and further from the storage facility and its dangerous contents. Rainbow Dash began to feel rather smug about how easy all it was. Then the lizard stopped flinching when she hit it. Huh? She thought, right before it rang her bell with a right cost. Dazed, she stumbled back, beginning to spread her wings and take to the air, only to realize too late she had been lured into the business district, filled with buildings as tall or taller than her. Her wings impacted unpleasantly on glass and steel, sending shards raining down on panicked ponies below, and forcing her to draw them close once again. You know, people, I hope you appreciate this. This is probably the closest we're going to get to Godzilla vs. Ultraman. Distracted by this, she tried to avoid the beast grabbing her forelegs with its hands, then falling backward, dragging her on top of it. She didn't know what the point of that maneuver was until it put its foot to her belly, bracing her as the lizard crashed to the ground, kicking, flipping her up and over, only to land much more heavily onto the city street. She was dimly aware of concrete breaking and fire hydrants bursting, but mostly, she felt just pain. Slowly and carefully, she staggered to her feet, only to be met by the lizard again.
When did this thing learn to fight?
She wondered as he continued to punish her, clawing, raking, and biting. She tried backing away as quickly as she could to get a chance to regroup and charge it, only to be met with another blast of flame. This one even harder, temporarily blinding her. The chaos in her was reacting, pulsing faster and faster. She let it run, charging forward as the flames died, delivering a headbutt to the creature. It fell, and she was on it, beating it with her hooves, tearing at its flesh. It tried to rise, but she ignored the feeble slash of its arms, punching the same spot in its chest again and again and again, aiming to punch through its ribcage and shatter its heart. No! She thought, drawing back in horror at her own actions. The last cost her, the lizard taking the opportunity to sever her off with all four limbs, sending her back to the ground as it began to rise. She staggered up as well, but her stomach lurched, the chaos lasting at her brain, trying to replace every thought with anarchy and hate. She looked down at herself and realized the light at her throat, symbolic of her element, faded from sky blue to angry red. The color timer symbolizes Rainbow Dash's connection to the elements of harmony. If that color timer starts blinking, then she may never rise again.
You people don't know how long I've been waiting to say that! I'm saying this as a die-hard Ultraman fan!
This fight couldn't go on. She had to stop it now, before she became a greatest threat as the monster itself. But how? She wasn't sure she could get up to speed to perform a sonic rainbow, and its size might level to the building. What else could she try? An idea popped away. She turned and ran the other way. Twilight watched the whole battle anxiously, seeing the momentum shift back and forth, helpless to help her friend. Now she watched Rainbow Dash apparently fleeing the battle, pausing as soon as she was clear of the skyscraper to spread her great wings and take to the air, growing upward and starting quickly for something so big. What was she going to do? She couldn't be thinking of performing a sonic rainbow. Even Rainbow Dash would be that careless. And as much as some might suspect her running away, Twilight knew in her heart of hearts Dash would never abandon her. If the Transform Pegasus was backing off, she had a reason. That meant Twilight had to give her time. Without a sparring partner, the Salamander turned and began walking down its own path of devastation, set once more on reaching the storage facility. The Royal Guard had been forced to turn all their attention to evacuating the survivors. What's left only her, Applejack, and Rarity to stand in his way. Looking grimly from Applejack to Rarity, then to the monster, she spoke. I'll grab everything I can and bring it here! Applejack, you bucket at that thing! Rarity, try to guide it to vulnerable spots! Maybe we can blind it or hurt its knees! The two nodded grimly. They knew the stakes and odds. Neither would back down. Twilight's sparkle blinked away a sudden wetness in her eyes. Rainbow Dash, she murmured. Hurry! Rainbow Dash was running out of time. She floated as high as she could, higher than she ever dared. So high the hair would barely support her weight. Strangely, the cold and thin air didn't bother her at all. The jewel at her throat began pulsing, each throb a little faster than the last. And with each pulse, another spike of heat lanced through her. She figured she had maybe 30 seconds before she lost it completely. It was time. She shifted her weight and pointed toward the spark of equestrian that was Manhattan. It dove, flapping her wings as hard as she could. At first, they hardly helped, gravity doing most of the work. But as the air got thicker, she was able to power forward and harder and harder. The wind resistance grew stronger as well. She could feel the cone of air forming out in front of her. And for once, she didn't try to punch through it, riding right on the ragged edge where it was strong as possible. She needed to be fast, not just fast enough. The ground was coming up faster than she expected. Her physics was still distorted, making everything look too small, throwing off her sense of speed. She began to pull up. It was agonizing slow process, turning her into momentum degree by degree. The turn had to be sharper, she realized. Pausing a moment, gathering her strength. If it was too gradual, even if she pulled out at times, she'd be over Philadelphia by the time she leveled off. She spotted her target, over halfway back to the warehouse and closing fast. It was now or ever, throwing everything in her body to her turn. Her loyalty, rage, her very spirit. She brought herself level over the city, a hurricane wind in her wake, the great buildings looming ahead, too close to her by far for her to fly. So she folded her wings. Twilight's sparkle had been forced all the way back to the street, near the ruined warehouse. The thing had used its fire breath on him again, and though she'd been able to seal the Applejack of Rarity, it spent almost all the magic she had left. She tried to face it anyway, only to be forcibly dragged away by Applejack, led with Rarity back to where Pinkie Pie had regained consciousness, and was watching over Fluttershy with anxious eyes. Fluttershy was awake as well, thanks Celestia, but still not strong enough to stand. Twilight looked at her friends, then back at the monster, just now emerging from the skyscrapers. They'd thrown everything they had at it, but it wasn't enough. They had nothing left. They had to withdraw, try to find Rainbow Dash, prepare to try the elements of harmony again. Manhattan would be destroyed, but they could save the rest of Equestria from this thing that moved without fear or pity, this product of their own carelessness. For a moment, she thought of looking away, the sight of her failure too painful. Then a blur of rainbow light hit it from behind. I don't know about you guys, but I'm playing the Ultraman Tiga theme in my head. As she, her friends, and the Royal Guard watched in shock, the light carried the creature closer and closer to the warehouse, only to bend at what seemed the last seconds to carry it up in the air. Debris caught in her wake shot past, leaving Twilight intensely grateful that she and her friends were standing somewhat to the side. The wind buffeted her mercilessly, though not so strongly as the true sonic rainbow. As they watched, the creature seemed to shrink smaller and smaller, soon almost a dot in the sky. Is he going into space? Sweet Celestia! Even as Twilight thought it, the rainbow light suddenly went out. She couldn't fly anymore. Rainbow Dash's wings had seized up, the muscles and joints unable to cope with the strain. She was still rising, but she was rising slower and slower. Well, sort of where she had hoped to be. Then again, she hadn't really thought past throw it into space. She was thinking about it now, though. Exhaustion had given her a brief clarity, even as discord continued to claw at her heart, the jewel at her throat throbbing achingly. She needed more oomph. She had let the lizard go now, and fell back to Equestria somewhere. And she was lucky, and landed somewhere unpopulated, inspired by the fall. If she was unlucky. No, she had needed more, and she had it. Her flesh had tried, but she could still feel the magic of every Pegasus still thrumming in her body, and alongside it, the chaos energy that could still barely command. She let the creature go. The motion slowing her just a fraction relative to it. She began to drift away. She focused that magic, feeling it burning her flesh, seeing it glow blinding her body. Strangely, she seemed to be concentrating in her forelegs, not her wings. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that one last act, to protect all her friends and all of Equestria. Even if she fell and never rose again, she could die happy, knowing they were safe. So she brought her forelegs together in front of her, and screamed at her head, gave it everything she had left. God, I love that move. Twilight gasped at the impossibly bright light that appeared in the sky, expanding in both directions now. One end carrying the giant monster higher and higher, the other driving toward the ground. A few seconds later, the upper end exploded, a rainbow-colored cloud spreading in all directions, hanging in the air as the light blazed down. Then, the light faded again, and she was left blinking, after images burned into her vision. As a result, she nearly missed that the light had entirely faded. Like a meteor, Rainbow Dash descended to Earth, crashing into the street dazedly close to where Twilight and friends were resting. "Rainbow Dash!" she screamed, leaping up and galloping over, her friends following at their best pace. All she could see when she reached the crash site, however, was billowing smoke. She lacked the strength to push it away. Thankfully, Rarity still had some reserves. She brought out a large fan and used it to flap at the smoke. It was clear to reveal a large but shallow crater, trickles of water from a busted main, and a bruised, battered, but very much alive and normal Rainbow Dash. The Pegasus groaned, shifted fitfully, and mumbled, "Did any pony get the number of that chariot?" Her friends charged at the crater, heedless of their injuries, and clustered around her, holding her close. Unfortunately, that was not the end of the story. When the six of them had finished laughing, crying, alternately congratulating and scolding Rainbow Dash for her reckless endangerment of herself and others that had, nonetheless, won the day, they were able to return their attention to the original reason they had come to Manhattan. Carefully, they walked over the rubble in the street, only vaguely paying attention to the royal guards, who were just beginning to restore order, and made their way to the warehouse that held the dangerous cargo they fought so hard to save. What's made it hard to take when they showed up to find the entire warehouse empty. "Where could have it all gone?" Rainbow Dash protested. "There was tons of it here!" She gestured fitfully at the dust marks on the floor. Twilight Sparkle managed to regain some of her strength, and the horn flickered. She was shocked by the results. Teleport magic was used here. Some pony took it all away! "Who would do such a thing?" Pinkie Pie squealed, raising her hose to her mouth.
And why? On who?
Ernie added. "Not even you could move that so much quickly on your best day." She gazed at Twilight Sparkle as he said. Guys?" Rainbow Dash said, suddenly feeling extremely guilty. He had started to look at where the only remaining barrel of discordium sat, crushed like a soda can. Its contents sprayed out all over the floor, the wall, the catwalk. There was a silhouette of the wall that resembled a rather surprised unicorn. "I think I may know what happened to the Discord juice," Dash simply admitted. Rainbow Dash sighed, sulking her cloud. "It's just not fair!" she groused. "Oh, sure, they all stayed the city, and everybody had been happy about that. But so much of it had been torn up during the fighting, They hadn't exactly been in a mood to throw a party. The group had been pressed to disaster relief instead of getting to see any of the Manhattan sights. Not that any of them were open anyway after the attack. Combine that with Rainbow Dash's little screw-up, it hadn't exactly been a happy group of ponies that limped back to Ponyville. Then they found out what happened to the stuff. Dash groaned, rolling over. 3 times this month. 3 times! Another site something or other had popped up and set up for the Nature Mayor's City to start wrecking the place. Twilight says he was making progress on the spell being used by the once Professor Saya to move stuff around, and so he was hopefully to be able to find his base of operations so they could shut him down. Des didn't hold out much hope for that happening soon. Give it 45, 50 episodes, you'll find him. How much longer am I going to be stuck with this thing? She complained, looking down at the necklace still around her neck. They discovered the hard way that it was still contaminated by chaos, and while wearing the element of loyalty kept that under control, if she took it off it would transform again. The obvious answer, to use the elements to purifier, had been put off by Twilight, who wanted to study transformation. And then the first monster showed up. Then they decided it would be best served leaving Rainbow Dash on mumble and monster pummeling duty until they found a solution that didn't involve dragging all 6 of them hither and on. As if summoned by her thoughts, a rolled-up scroll appeared in front of Rainbow Dash's nose, bearing Celestia's seal. She unrolled it, reading it with no surprise that another monster had appeared. Some sort of flying bug, headed directly for Candela itself. Oh man, Sunday already? She whined, standing up. This one could fly to boot. Well, maybe that could be okay. If he could fly it in the air, at least he wouldn't be trashing every pony's stuff. She personally made it 4 least constructed ponies happy, still be stinking rich, she figured. Might as well get this over with, she continued. But to tell the truth, she wasn't feeling as bad as he sounded. Not anymore. At least it was something to do. It was pretty awesome to be able to punch out some mutant freak, and not have to feel guilty about blowing it up afterwards. Heck, the last one, she figured out how to throw a shockwave from her mane somehow, and it had been cut in half, and it exploded! Mental note, don't do that at city limits again. She reached for her necklace, pulling it off and holding the gemstone in the sky. It wasn't strictly necessary. Technically, she could just will the thing to stop holding the chaos back. But without a henshin pose, how are you going to look cool when you yell out the words henshin? But it felt right somehow to add a bit of flair to the proceedings. Which was why, just before she started to grow and felt the silver skin slide over her body once more, she shouted, "Let's go! Ultra Dash! Come on, baby, take me higher!" Well, see, somebody's excited. I can't help it, Your Majesty. I'm a huge Ultraman fan. Please, introduce the next segment. Gladly. Next time, I'm going to see what the other ponies are doing at this moment.